Good morning, everyone. Selamat pagi, siang, sore, atau malam. It's very, very nice to be with you all via Zoom or this recording. My name is Paul Lawrence. I'm recording this in Perth, Western Australia. And I actually gave this lecture in October 21. But due to technical difficulties, I am doing it again. I really hope that we will be able to meet in person, hopefully in 22, and we can do some seminars together with Edith and Nicole. So this is the first lecture of Seminar 1. And it is called What is Spirit and How Do We Know It? And I wanted to give you the biggest possible picture of Waldorf education, Waldorf early childhood education. And I couldn't think of anything bigger than this whole spiritual picture. Because in Waldorf education, this is the goal, actually, of our education. We recognize every human being as being a spiritual being. And we are on a journey of unfoldment, and our destination is also spiritual. So what do I mean by spiritual? This is something that we're going to have to talk about and discuss today and for the rest of Seminar 1, and indeed for the next 3 years. So let me just get some slides up here. Okay, what is spirit and how do we know it? Let's just start off by saying that Waldorf education is holistic. And we are educating not just the physical human being, but we're educating a lot deeper than that. In Waldorf education, we actually talk about 4 different layers of the human being. The first layer is what we can see here, the physical being, but it gets more halus, more subtle, more refined than that. We also educate what we call the etheric of the child, or the life force of the child. So what do I mean by that? Etheric, life force. Well, let me give you an example. Have you ever been to a school or a classroom where the children look half dead and the teacher is so boring and the children are almost falling asleep? There is very little life in that class, right? And very little life in the teacher. Compare that to a Waldorf school where the children are enthusiastic, they want to learn, they're full of life, they are asking questions, they want to know more, they can't wait to go outside and play, and then they want to come inside and sit still and listen to the teacher. Every word they want to listen to, they're so full of life. Well, we want to train you as teachers or parents or interested people how to control, manage, understand this life force in yourself and how to use it in your class. Wouldn't that be great to have a class that is full of life? Obviously, we can't just tell you to do this, and this, and then you have the life. It's a lot more subtle than that, of course. So we are educating physical life and what we call the astral body of the child. And the astral is the inner pictures, the inner life of the child. We tell stories, we sing songs, and the children builds these inner impressions of the world. We talk about the farmer who goes out into his field to plant some rice, and then he waits and he says his prayers, and one day he sees something coming up, and one day the rice will be ready and he takes it and harvests it. We're building up this beautiful picture of what it is to grow food. And it is a good picture. It is a right picture. So there is like a moral, ethical aspect to this astral body. We have all of these lovely impressions inside of us. And ideally, we feel that the world is good, the world is beautiful. Ideally, we want the children to enjoy and go for the things that are good and recognize the things that are not good. So the astral body is also the body that says, I want this, or I don't want this, I don't like this. So this is a little description of the astral body. We have another body, which is even more subtle, even more refined, and we call it the higher self, or we call it the ego, the pure I, the I, saya, aku, the spirit of my inner being. And this is what we're going to talk about today. What is this? How do we define this spirit? Well, the spirit comes down through all of these bodies. We will talk about how when the child first stands up and feels its verticality, it feels like an I am standing. And then one day it will actually say the word I, or me, or Paul want this, or Paul don't want that. But this I is something that only human beings can say about themselves. Only human beings have this I in their bodies, in themselves. Animals do not have it. Animals have the inner body, the astral body, and a life force and a physical body. Plants do not have an I. They do not have an inner body, but they have a life body and a physical body. And then, of course, rocks, minerals, stones just have physical. They do not have life, astral, or higher self. Getting back to our question, what is spirit? This one here. And how do we know it? Here's a big question. What in you is beyond the physical? It's much bigger than the physical. What in you is beyond the life force? Or it is eternal. When your life force, one day it will go, you will die. But something in you is eternal. It will live after you die. What is this? This is the question we are asking. And what in you is beyond duality? It's even bigger than your concept of right, wrong, what you want, what you hate. All of these inner pictures you've built up. What is there something that's even bigger than that? And the answer, of course, is this spirit. It is your higher self. Okay, so let us try and define a little bit further this spirit. It's very, very difficult. How do we describe it? Can you put it into words? Well, right now I'm trying, right? I'm trying to put it into words, but I cannot give you a definition. Spirit is blah, 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 blah. Ah, now I know it. I can remember that. It's in my brain. I know what spirit is. It doesn't work like that, does it? So I can talk around the topic. I can approach the spirit from different angles. But to actually give you a definition which is good for your intellect, no. I can talk around it, but not about it. Can you feel the spirit? Can you start to get a feeling of what I'm talking about? I hope you can. And if we approach it from different angles, you will start to get a feeling for something that I'm talking about. Maybe it's more of a heart knowledge than a brain knowledge. Rudolf Steiner encourages all people to engage creatively with the arts. And it's not just to be creative for the fun of being creative or just because we want to be artistic. It is so that we can start to feel more subtle meaning. When we paint something, we enter a subtle quality of what that is. When we sing about something, it's a different way of knowing something. When we sculpt, when we tell a story, we are approaching this thing from a holistic, a feeling kind of way. So yes, we can feel the spirit. Can you think the spirit? This is an interesting question because most of our thinking is brain bound. What we're trying to do in Anthroposophy, in the philosophy of Rudolf Steiner, is not just brain, but heart, is to make some communication happen between heart and brain. Most of our thinking, our day-to-day thinking, material existence, mundane life, our thinking is very kind of earthbound, isn't it? We have to think about what we're going to eat, where we're going to buy it, how much money we have, how much tax we have to pay. We have to think about our obligations, our parents, our children, our mosque maybe, or our temple, our community. So much to think about, isn't there? So much to think about. We wake up in the morning and boom, got to think about this, got to think about this. And so all of this thinking is to do with everyday existence on Earth. But we want to be able to think about spirit, and it has to go from this direction to that direction. And the spirit cannot really be thought in the same way. We have to kind of almost explode our thinking into something much, much bigger. And it cannot contain spiritual concepts just in the brain. We have to use our heart as well. So when our thinking, our thoughts go from the finite, everyday, measurable things, physical things, to the infinite, where we go into the almost incomprehensible, unimaginable world of spirit. Our thinking can be exercised. It's like a muscle. We can exercise this muscle to have much, much bigger thoughts from the heart and brain. And I'm going to ask you some questions, and I want you to continue to ask these questions as a way of exercising this muscle. I could ask you, for example, who am I? Where do I come from? What is the purpose of life? What is the cause of material existence? Just an example of big, big questions which you cannot find an answer just with your brain. Who am I? Who am I? I cannot give you an answer right now. I cannot even give you a book and say, this will tell you. It takes time. You have to go inside. You have to pray or meditate or do some kind of inner work just to start to feel or expand your thinking, to get a little whisper of an answer. Who am I? You can be very lazy and say, oh, who am I? Well, I'm Paul. I'm a teacher. I am an Australian. Is that really who I am? I don't really have to think about that. I could change my name. I'm no longer Paul, so who am I? I could change my occupation. I'm no longer a teacher. Who am I, really? I could change my citizenship. I'm no longer Australian. So who am I? Where do I come from? What is the purpose of life? Have you ever asked yourself these questions? Very, very good, very healthy for your inner development to ask questions like this. What is the cause of material existence? Who made the world? Is there a God? If there is a God, how did he make all this? Can I comprehend this? Can I try at least to imagine what the cause is, how all of this came to be? If we ask these questions, we are exercising these infinite kind of thoughts. The answers will not come quick and easy. If they do, they're probably not very good answers. Keep asking without expectations of an answer. You cannot command God to give you knowledge. Who am I? Who am I? God, I want you to tell me in 5 minutes who I am. Doesn't work like that. Just keep asking. Maybe an answer will come today, maybe tomorrow, maybe not. We cannot expect. Keep listening. This gesture of listening means being open, keeping our chattering, gossiping mind very, very quiet. Sometimes you might find that place in a mosque or in a temple or in a church. It's quiet and you can just be by yourself, and you go inside and you quiet your mind. This is what I mean by listening. The answers to these questions may come unexpectedly in any form. Don't expect me to give you the answers in one lecture. Don't expect the answer to come from seminar 1 or from a book or from a wise man. Maybe it'll come this afternoon when you go for a little walk and you hear a little bird, or when you see a little baby smile at you. Maybe that'll give you some sort of answer, something deep. You never know when these answers will come. Last year, we looked at this question, where do I come from? That was the first lecture that I gave in a mini seminar. Where do I come from? Where do I come from? How are we going to answer that question? Where do I come from? And we gave two different answers. One was a beautiful story, and one was a scientific one. Where do I come from? We had like a heart answer, and we have a head answer. So my wife Nicole told this beautiful story that we tell in kindergartens when it's a child's birthday. Where do I come from? And she told the story of how a long, long time ago, you were up with your angels, up with the stars, and you were looking down on the earth. And you could see a mummy and a daddy. And they were looking up at the stars, and they were wishing for a little baby. And the mummy and the daddy had prepared a beautiful house. They even had a special bed for their baby, and they were waiting and praying for that baby to come. And when you saw that beautiful mummy and that handsome daddy, your heart longed to go down to earth, and you asked your angels, is it time for me? And they nodded and said yes. And then the angels began to sing, and they made a beautiful rainbow-colored bridge all the way from the stars down to the earth. And you started to walk down that beautiful rainbow bridge. Mm. 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 You could hear the stars singing. And if you listened carefully, you could already hear your mummy singing to you. You felt yourself beginning to flow with the music like water. And you felt yourself coming into the body of a little baby. And mummy looked at you and you opened your eyes and you saw your mummy and your daddy for the first time. And they smiled at you. And they said, welcome, welcome. Does that story help to answer the question, where do I come from? Do we get a feeling? A scientist might say, well, that story is not true, is it? How could you possibly, there's no such thing as a rainbow bridge. And you ask the scientist, well, you tell me, where do I come from? And he'll say, well, you came from a spermatozoa and an egg, and there was a cell division and a zygote and biological chemical processes, and that's where you came from. Ah, okay. So we have two different answers. Are they right? Are they wrong? Is there some truth? Can we use our heart to balance all of these answers and start to get an answer just by listening? So the answers come in different ways. They don't come from books. They don't come from going to courses. Sometimes the answers will come just like that. Ah, thank you, Paul, for telling me that story. Now I know where I come from. Maybe. Sometimes the answer will come, ah, I saw the answer in my dream, just like that. Sometimes the answers will come almost like an accident, unexpectedly. But we can't really rely on accidental answers. We can rather try and be ready for spiritual knowledge. It's like a farmer planting a flower, a seed of a flower. And the flower grows just by accident. Maybe it'll grow, maybe it won't. Or what the farmer can do is to make really fertile soil, put a little fence around so that no insects or bugs can get to the little flower. Make sure it's watered every day, make sure it has enough light. In other words, he can prepare the soil for that flower to grow. And it is the same with knowing the Spirit. How do we know the Spirit? Is it just an accident, or can we prepare? Is there a way of cultivating spiritual knowledge like a farmer? How do we prepare the soil? Rudolf Steiner gives us some clues, some answers. And this is a fantastic book. If you want to know more about how to know the Spirit, how to know higher worlds, it is a great book. So I'm going to tell you about chapter one of How to Know Higher Worlds. And this will help us to prepare the soil to know the Spirit. In chapter 1, Rudolf Steiner says we need 2 moods of soul, not soil, but soul. In other words, we need a certain kind of feeling, a mood. 2 different moods or feelings will help us to be ready to know the Spirit. And these 2 moods are called reverence and a rich inner life. So let's talk about these 2 moods. What is reverence? I believe in Bahasa Indonesia, we say takjub. Takjub is reverence. Reverence is like a holy awe. We need this kind of mood of takjub, of reverence, if we are going to receive something very high. What is awe? Have you ever seen a child pick up a leaf with a beautiful insect on it and go, look, Mum, oh, look at this, isn't it beautiful? There's awe. He is just in wonder of God's creation. Children naturally have awe. Adults, I hope, have still a little bit of awe in them. When you see something and it's just so beautiful, you just go, oh, you actually say the word, oh, awe. But it is something holy, something divine. So we, as adults, we feel God must have something to do with this. And Steiner says we need to have this holy awe for truth and knowledge. So when someone says something to you which is true and it just feels so true, so right for you, that you go, oh, yes, thank you for telling me that. This is reverence. This is holy awe for truth and knowledge. Reverence is a profound feeling that there is something higher than ourselves. Imagine you go to the top of a mountain and you're above the clouds and you see the sun rise. You have a profound feeling that there is something much, much bigger, something divine. There must be a God. There is something much bigger than yourself. This is reverence. Humility, rendah hati. You feel, I am small compared to this much, much bigger thing. The opposite of humility is, of course, arrogance. I am so great. I am so big. I'm the king of the world. That kind of person is not humble, no humility, and is not reverence, not reverent. Rudolf Steiner says, we certainly have the right to turn our eyes toward the light, but we must earn this right. Kita semua punya hak to turn the eyes towards the light. We have the right to see the spiritual worlds, but we have to earn it. We have to be layak, worthy of receiving it. So we need to be humble, holy awe, profound feeling that there is something higher than ourselves. This gives us, we have earned the right to turn our eyes towards the light. True devotion, unfolded in the soul, produces an inner strength or force that sooner or later leads to spiritual knowledge. True devotion. Devotion, in Hindu and Buddhism, we say bhakti. Devotion, what's the word in your religion? It's a love of God, love of divine. When this comes out of the soul from inside, you know, this love, it feels soft and warm and beautiful, but it actually makes you strong. It produces an inner strength inside. It's like a force that will sooner or later lead you to spiritual knowledge. This love of God makes you strong inside and makes you worthy of receiving spiritual knowledge. Whoever has been lucky enough to receive an education that cultivated those feelings is well prepared in later life to seek the way to higher knowledge. If you have this reverence, your children will absorb it, will also learn reverence from you. your whole home environment, your whole kindergarten environment will be filled with reverence, and your children will be very lucky. You are preparing the soil for them. And in later life, they have more chance of being very wise adults. Isn't that what you want for your children? One day they will be amazingly wise people, and the Spirit will come to them. They may even know God. You are preparing the environment, preparing the soil for these lucky children. Reverence. Let's look at the other one, a rich inner life. A person rich in feeling and deep soul, who passes through a beautiful mountain landscape, will have a different experience from one whose inner life is poor in feeling. I want you right now to have rich imagination. I want you to go on a journey through a beautiful mountain landscape. Okay, let's go for a drive in the mountains of Java or wherever you are. You have such beautiful mountains. Can you feel that beautiful landscape? Can you see the amazing colors? The mountains in the distance, they're just so, what's the color of them? It's like a deep purple or blue. The dappled light coming through, maybe you're driving through the jungle a little bit, and that beautiful light comes through the bamboo forest. The rich smells of the earth, the sounds of the cicadas and the crickets and the birds. And you see so many beautiful things. Maybe you see the beautiful rivers and children playing in the rivers. Rich inner life. What else do you see in your beautiful mountain landscape? Are you having a rich inner experience? This is very different experience from one whose inner life is poor in feeling. Imagine your friend is with you, and the whole drive, they're just on their HP, looking at their Instagram, and all they want to do is stop at a nice place. Ayo, selfie dulu, smile, everyone smile. That's all they're interested in. Very surface feeling or life. Not an inner life at all. It's an outer life and not rich at all. In this, this year and last year, almost everyone in the world has had to be in lockdown, has had to stay at home so that COVID did not spread. Locked in our houses. And for some, you can really feel the rich inner life when you can't go outside. There's so many things you could do. You can read an amazing book. You can write an amazing story or poem. You can paint, you can draw, you can learn a new language. You can imagine in your brain, in your mind, your heart. You can be in that beautiful mountain landscape. Even though you're locked in your room, you are in the beautiful landscape because you have a rich inner life. And of course, we know other people who, when they cannot go outside, they go crazy. They have no rich inner life. They need outside stimulus all the time. So you need to cultivate this mood of soul, of having a rich inner life. This will help you to know the Spirit. We have to experience the divine in our own souls before we can find it in our surroundings. Even if you're locked in your house, that is a perfect place to experience the divine, to experience the Spirit. We've talked about all these different ways, through feeling, through thinking, through talking around it. You don't need to go anywhere to experience that. But we have to experience it in our own self, in our souls, before we can find it outside in the surroundings. So let's think about 2 moods of soul. How can we practice reverence and a rich inner life? Please, this is very important groundwork, preparing the soil for everything that we will do in this seminar. And we have a rule. Now, this is unusual. It's very rare that Rudolf Steiner gives us a rule. He tells us there are no rules in anthroposophy, but he says there is one rule. If you want to know the spiritual world, the rule is create moments of inner peace for yourself. Create moments of inner peace for yourself. And in these moments, learn to distinguish the essential from the inessential. If we want to know the Spirit, we have to do something. We have to prepare, we have to exercise. And the exercise, number 1 exercise, there's lots of exercises we can do, and I'm sure you may have practiced various techniques, but most systems, techniques will talk about this rule: creating moments of inner peace. You've got to actually find the time. Shut the door and say, I need 5 minutes or 15 minutes. Or go to the temple, go to the mosque or the church and create moments of inner peace. In this book, How to Know Higher Worlds, after saying this rule, Rudolf Steiner goes on for another 10 pages about how to create this mood of inner peace. You can read this book, or you can develop your own techniques. Maybe you've already learned about how to create inner peace for yourself. It doesn't matter. You do not have to follow Steiner's system. It can be your own way. But as Waldorf teachers, as good parents whose goal is to have a spiritual path, a spiritual life, we need to find time to create inner peace for ourselves. Learn to distinguish the essential from the inessential. What is important? What is not important? When I am teaching my children what is important, what is not important. When I ask myself these questions, who am I? What is important about who I am and what is not important? So we have covered a basic definition of spirit, and it may sound vague, it may sound too big. That's okay for our first lecture. That's okay if it's all way too big. But throughout the seminar, throughout the 3 years, we will talk about various aspects of the spirit. We'll come from this angle and from here, and we'll be creative. We will draw and paint, and we'll start to create a mood. But please start now. Today, do the rule. Create moments of inner peace. Think about reverence. What is reverence for you? How can you make a rich inner life? Discuss this, talk about it with your friends, with other people who are doing this training. Have study groups. This needs to be alive in you. Doing this seminar, we're not just watching video, taking notes and storing the information in our brains. No, that is not what Waldorf education is. That's not how we teach our children. We don't just tell them the facts, tell them to remember it. It is something living and breathing in you. So please come back to these questions. What is spirit? How do I know it? What is reverence? What is a rich inner life? And how do I create moments of inner peace and learn to distinguish the essential from the inessential? So thank you everyone for staying to the end of this lecture. I know it is not easy. It's a lot to think about. But we have lots of time to digest. Thank you, and enjoy the rest of the seminar.